I've got a sense of curiosity. I think that's a word I'll probably use a few times during our conversation. I think it's just such a revolutionary opportunity, and I think it's absolutely it's going to impact every single sector and industry around the world. I'm always trying to look over the horizon. What's the next 3 to 5 to 10 years going to look like? So of course, I was against it. It was it's a nonsense, isn't it? And the general narrative is the same: crypto's a scam, and that's a real challenge, I think, for Bitcoin.
Hey, Alan, welcome to the Bitcoin IFA podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's the first episode. Really excited to get a luminary such as yourself in the financial planning world.
Well, it's great. I feel very honoured to come on this. It's interesting, isn't it? Obviously, as you know, I host or co-host a couple of podcasts, and and this is the first one you're doing. So first of all, I just want to say, congratulations to you. It's quite a big move, isn't it? We were chatting just before you hit record. It's a bit nerve-wracking, but here I am. Not as if I'm some big podcaster or anything, but I've done 120 or something episodes. So what I would say to you is, it does get a bit better. It gets a bit easier as time goes on. So, hopefully, I'll be gentle on you, you be gentle on me, and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Okay, deal. Yeah, I can still feel the anxiety in the background, but hopefully it'll wane. Actually, bringing up the podcast. So, the Trap podcast was when I was retraining to be a financial planner. The Trap podcast was one of the first things that I came across. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much. The boys will be pleased. No, it's been very, very well received. I have to say, it's just like four guys who are mates in real life, and we just sort of get on a recording like this every couple of weeks, chew the fat, talk about the issues of the day. I think what's particularly interesting about it is we are practitioners. We are in the trenches doing the work, and I think that's so we live and breathe it, and so the audience, which is financial planners or people in the profession, can engage with it quite well. So thanks very much for your positive words.
Well, and thank you to you and the other hosts, because while I was retraining, I was reaching out to all of you, and all of you were very generous with your time, giving me advice. So thank you.
Right.
Let's jump straight into it. So talk to me about your background in financial planning. How did you find yourself in it?
Yeah, that old chestnut. I'm of the generation that fell into financial planning. I know quite a few people now are intentionally like you, perhaps, historically, and there are degrees and graduates coming out with degrees in financial planning and going in there with a bit of intention. But I certainly wasn't that person. Very simply, I have only ever had two jobs. I am Scottish by birth, and I moved to the big bright lights of London town, way back when, decades ago, 30 years ago. And I really got my first job at a company which used to be called Standard Life. It's now changed its name a couple of times, and lost its vowels and then added them back. But originally it was Standard Life, which were still are under Aberdeen, a large financial services group, asset manager, pension provider, all that sort of stuff. And I sort of cut my teeth in that role. I joined as what was called a trainee broker consultant. So my role was really to go out and kind of knock on the doors of IFAs, really go and sell the products, services, portfolios of that organization to the intermediary market. So I knew nothing about it. It was just a job came up. My dad said, that they've got a good reputation. I'd never heard of them. But he said, no, they were Edinburgh based, well respected, offered me a decent salary and package and everything. So I thought I'd give it a go, as they say. So I was there and really kind of learned my craft over a decade at Standard Life. Got to know a lot of obviously it's quite a few years ago, more than 20 years ago I left. But got to know the IFA community and the advisory market, and a lot of these people that I knew then I still know now. The people are still around, and I always felt it was a very positive and collaborative community. People do help each other. Even back then there was various groups. Obviously this is kind of pretty much pre-internet times, but there was various networking groups and meetings and things that I would go to and meet up with them. But after a good period of time there, and I enjoyed my my period of time working with this large institution. But something happened. I had this sort of moment of madness, and I just thought, I'd like to go and set up my own company. I've seen all these IFAs doing it, and I did think, how difficult can it be? It looks really simple. They sit in there, they speak to clients. It was very different, seriously, to what it is. I mean, you're relatively new into the profession as it is now. And back then, I mean, God, it was less professional, put it that way, in terms of standards, qualifications, expectations, all that sort of thing, and it's very much a commission-based model. Fundamentally, you recommended products and services. Well, products primarily pensions and investments and life insurance policies, etc. And you were remunerated in the form of a commission for selling it, like a traditional sales job. Is now. So I thought, why don't I give this a go? I was at the point in my life where, having been there for over a decade, I looked at people who were older than me in that company and much older than me at the time. And it seems you can become sort of institutionalized, can't you? You get into that same thing and you just get used to it. And there was plenty of people then that were like 40-year career people in the same company. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just felt I probably regret that. There was nothing wrong with where I was. I was really enjoying it, but I just thought, I am going to go and give it a go. Try doing something by myself. So I resigned and set up effectively a one-man band. It was me, and actually, I had one employee who was a sort of PA support person, and that was it. That was me in a tiny room above a shop in Buckingham Palace Road in Victoria in London. I didn't have zero clients because I did a deal with one of my advisors that I knew who was going into retirement. So I effectively bought his client bank. He had a small client bank, but it was decent, and therefore at least I had something to go at on day one. Although there was little or no recurring revenue in the business. You had a client bank. What's a client bank? It was just a list of people that have bought a product from you in the past. But at least I had someone to speak to on day one. And that's it. And that's the business that it is, the same business today. All these, I mean, it's now coming up for this year, be 21 years ago. So we are, we're a mature business, been around a couple of decades, and we have just kind of grown the business without any grand plans to take over the world. It just organically, one new client at a time, one new hire. When we got busy, we need to hire someone else to help us out. And I don't know where the time's gone. so that's it. Kind of that's it. That's the headlines. I've 2 jobs, financial. So I've never done any other industry or anything. I've always worked in retail financial services, starting off at the sort of product provider side and now at the intermediary side.
Wow, what a journey!
Well, it's kind of, it's not very complex, put it that way, but.
Well, Capital is doing great guns, so congratulations for that.
Thank you.
20 years in or whatever it is. Yeah. And it's a very attractive and very progressive company. You and I in the past have had conversations about potentially employing me. So it's certainly for me, it's a very attractive and progressive company. And actually, I wanted to talk to you about that because you yourself seem to be someone that really leans into new technology and searching out for new paradigms within the industry. So if it's something like, for example, beyond the 4% global equities, which is a relatively small paradigm, I would say, from my limited experience within regulated financial advice. So what's led you to be like that, to embracing new technology and wanting to not challenge, but maybe slightly disrupt the paradigm?
Yeah, I think it's in my DNA. I've got a sense of curiosity. I think that's a word I'll probably use a few times during our conversation. I've always just been, even as a kid, I've always been quite curious and trying to learn things, and I've always been quite an avid reader. I still do read quite a lot of books, and I'm interested in things across a broad spectrum. I'm interested in technology, but I'm interested in arts, sport, music, creative stuff, all that sort of thing. And I mean, nowadays, we're all overwhelmed with the volume of information that's out there. So you've got to be a bit selective. and just find out things that interest you, and learn about them. We've got no excuse now not to. I'm not a big television watcher, for example. I watch a lot of TV. Therefore, there's usually a few hours of an evening or during the week where I can just catch up with something, read. Nowadays, watch a YouTube video, that sort of thing. So, I mean, thanks for saying that, because I do think that's what we are as a business. We were looking back at some of the innovations which are now just very regular, but people can't believe these things didn't really exist before. We were certainly one of the first companies in the UK, I believe, to really embrace effectively cash flow planning, building out proper financial plans using technology to support that. We were the first or second company to use the wrap platforms, the particular one that we still use to this day. And you mentioned sort of thing our investment philosophy. We were, I think, it's relatively early adopters. Obviously, there was plenty of people around the world doing this stuff before us, but kind of really understanding the science of investing and taking the time. And I'll perhaps expand on that during our conversation. But taking the time, not accepting what you read at face value and saying, what does that really mean? Let me do a bit more research. Let's dig a bit deeper and find out the truth. There's a lot of surface level information out there for all of us, and it isn't necessarily always spot on and correct. Some is very simplified, and some, let's face it, there's an agenda behind the creators of that data or information. So having an independent mind, a sense of curiosity, has helped us. And of course, where we are right now with AI technology, much to the annoyance of plenty of people that I know, and perhaps a few colleagues, and certainly at least one of my co-hosts on Trap, I'm kind of deep in the weeds on AI technology. I think it's just such a revolutionary opportunity, and I think it's absolutely it's going to impact every single sector and industry around the world. But I think it really fits well with financial planning in terms of we are a profession where there's a lot of data, there's numbers, there's words, there's imagery, there's regulatory requirements. So there's quite a lot of fairly dull, repetitive work that's required, and AI, I mean, it's going to help us. It already helps us in our business a lot, and we've really embraced it. We use quite a number of different tools. So yeah, we are innovative. I'm always trying to look over the horizon. What's the next 3 to 5 to 10 years going to look like? And yeah, I mean, I guess that's what probably one of the reasons you and I were speaking before, and I guess maybe one of the reasons why you were kind enough to invite me on this podcast.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, we're both big advocates for AI, and innovation, and you're absolutely correct. There is a lot of repetitive, regulatory, quite boring work that has to go into financial advice. I sat behind my computer doing it for hours and hours and hours as a regulated financial advisor. And the same as you, was looking 3 to 5 years over the horizon and just thinking, we're not implementing this stuff fast enough. And we're also not changing our investment thesis fast enough. This is a Bitcoin podcast. Let's move on to that. I want to dig a bit more into that curiosity, because everyone, and I mean everyone, is against Bitcoin until they're for it. So can you talk me through your pre and post, your against, and then how you became for it? Hey team, a very quick pause. If you're a financial advisor, wealth manager, or accountant, there's a very good chance your clients have already asked you about Bitcoin. And if they haven't, they soon will. That's why I've created 2 free downloads to help you feel confident and informed and ready to have professional conversations with your clients about this new emerging asset class. Head over to thebitcoinifa.com to get 1, the 8 reasons you need Bitcoin in your personal and professional portfolios, and 2, the Bitcoin cheat sheet, a concise, jargon-free guide designed to help you go from zero to confident and knowledgeable in under 10 minutes. Whether you're Bitcoin curious or Bitcoin cautious, these resources will help you speak with clarity and confidence. It takes less than 60 seconds. Again, that's thebitcoinifa.com, and enter your email address to get your hands on these free resources today. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah. Again, I'm for it. There's a range, isn't there, of for it, and there is people who are absolutely, obsessive about it. I'm still at the, to be frank, I'm still at the kind of curiosity stage, and well, I'll tell you exactly where I am. So of course, I was against it. It was, it's a nonsense, isn't it? It's because it gets mixed up with all this. Again, it's back to consuming information and media. If you read a newspaper report, you read some, whatever, anything that comes across your computer or a newspaper, and the general narrative is the same: crypto's a scam. And that's a real challenge, I think, for Bitcoin, and it still is. I mean, a quick sidebar here. On my other podcast, Bulletproof Entrepreneur, where I tend to interview, just interesting business owners and entrepreneurs. Um, Last year, I had a guy called Ray Trapani on the podcast, and he is the star. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Netflix show, documentary, effectively, called Bitconned. So I mean, he uses Bitcoin effectively. He uses that word Bitconned, and it was a complete scam. A lot of people went to prison for it. They just literally made up, a coin, a token, went down to Miami, drove around in Lamborghinis, and then, some of them got locked up. And so there is this opportunity to misunderstand it. So I was then, and prior to that, very much in the, it's a scam and people make up coins and there's no value to it and it's just a bit of computer code, all that stuff. But I'll tell you, and I do have to give him credit to this. My old man, my dad, is called Laurie, who is 84, but you wouldn't know it. He's fit and healthy and goes out walking his dogs every day in Scotland. But he's always been, just by nature, all the time I've been growing up, quite a challenger of conventional thinking. Put it that way. He's always had a mistrust of, let's say, government, central banks, banks in general, and all those sort of things. And I think I was reflecting on this before, coming on this podcast today, tracking this all the way back. So my dad was, and to some extent still is, an entrepreneur. He was in real estate, property developments, and some quite big ones in the end, big commercial developments. But that in that game, you tend to be quite highly leveraged, tend to borrow a lot of money. You're at the mercy of banks and lenders, and they can pull the rug at any given moment. And way back in when I was small, when I was a little kid in the 1970s, way before your time, I just remember we at one point lived a very grand lifestyle. My dad was doing really well. We lived in a big house. I was driven to school in his Rolls Royce, so we were rich, but by most people's standards. And then, because I was really young, there was a sense of it happened overnight. It happened over, of course, perhaps a year, but we were no longer living in this big house, and I was getting the bus to school now. And the reason for that was because in the 1970s, as you may know, there was huge amounts of trouble in the economy with the oil crisis. Inflation spiked to nearly 20%. I think at some point interest rates went through the roof, and effectively, my dad he didn't go bankrupt, but he pretty much lost most of his empire during that period. And so that, as you can appreciate, is very, very disruptive for a family. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and we were all then crammed into a little flat, and it caused quite a few challenges and problems in our family over the years. And that was another reason why my dad began to really think about this whole thing and begin to consider how he can protect himself, his own family, and try to navigate this sort of centralized control of things where people can, everything beyond your control, people can, in his case, and in our case, materially impact in quite a short period of time your life. So fast forward to maybe 7 years ago, I want to say, I was visiting him and he said, "Have you heard about Bitcoin?" I said, yeah, I've heard about it. Scam, isn't it? He goes, "No, it's not. So he was on it, He was there years ago and doing his research and reading books and just trying to learn more about it. And I was just so not for it. I just thought, my poor old dad is going to get ripped off by some crypto scammer. So, and I was advising him, because I'm in, obviously in proper financial services, and I advise proper clients about real investments. So I didn't want to see him, be hurt financially or anything else. But he was so adamant about it. In fact, a funny thing also as well. On my last visit up there, I remember saying to him, "What's the point of it? Because it's not a currency. Because you can't use it. You can't use it to buy anything. No one accepts Bitcoin as a means of payment." And he was saying to me this a few years ago. Yeah, you can, because as you know, you can load up things like a Revolut card with digital Bitcoin. So on one of my visits, he and I went out. We had a pizza, and he said, "I'll show you it works." Use his Revolut card, paid in Bitcoin. I thought, okay, fair enough. It does work to that extent. And now he reminds me that those pizzas cost about 300 quid each in terms of the actual how the price of Bitcoin has moved in those last few years. So that was when, obviously it's a family member. My dad has obviously been influential in my life and still is. And it was just listening to him be, because he's a worthy, experienced person. He's not a nutcase. He's not. But here's the thing, and I've told him this as well. He was like too in my face. He was too. He said almost to the extent, "Look, you're dumb if you don't get this. I feel sorry for you, Alan. If you don't, look, I'm trying my best to educate you and help you. Read this book, do that." And that's the other thing. People say, "Read this book." I can't be bothered reading a 400-page book on something I don't find any significant value in. And I think that's the point. It's a lesson, and perhaps we will talk about it during our conversation. Is anyone who wants to educate people about this? It's just a new technology. Then there's ways and means of doing it which are much more palatable and maybe small bites, rather than criticizing you for not getting it, not understanding it, and then giving you the biggest load of homework you've ever got in your life. And he said, "What you got to do a minimum of 100 hours study." That's what he said before you. I'm too busy. I ain't going to study for 100 hours on this scammy thing. So it's bit by bit, isn't it? So I've got somebody in my family who is adamant about it, who every time I spoke to him and forever sending me YouTube links and all that sort of thing. Then you begin to think, okay, I'm hearing more about this. Let me therefore do a little bit of work. I'm not going to do 100 hours. Well, that's what I was saying at the time. I probably have done more than that now. And that's when your journey begins. I think that's what happens to a lot of people. Somebody that they trust and respect, who's not a nutcase, who's not like screaming at you on social media, says, "Yeah, I think you should. I think you really would benefit from learning a bit more about this thing, this new innovation that is, it's an alternative means of value, wealth creation, all those sort of things." And so therefore that's what happens. So to me, it's small steps. It's very, very small steps. That's what happens. And in fact, just to finish that part off, I have to give credit to you, good sir, for the thing that the final penny dropping for me really was, and it was only recently, was our mutual friend Joe Bryan, who created a film. In fact, this is only a half an hour, very, very accessible. It's like a Pixar cartoon type thing, isn't it? And you sent that to me. You sent that link, and I thought, all right, it's only half an hour, so I'll watch it. And it's like, yes, right, I get it. Because the good thing about Joe, and this is what I would say to anyone, don't start with Bitcoin. That's just a thing that no one knows. Start with what problem you're trying to solve. And when you understand the problem, and when I was watching that video, I'm just nodding my head. I'm saying, yes, of course. All these things are undeniable. They're statements of fact. And it leads you to the, what are you going to do about it, therefore? And that's so those, the creation of new ideas, new content, smaller bite-sized things that we can all do. And if anyone's listening to this and they haven't watched that, then certainly recommend that they go and check out. It's called "What's the Problem," isn't it? It's on YouTube and various other places. Invest half an hour, watch a video, and then see what you think. You might not agree with it, but it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile investment of your time, I would suggest.
I would completely agree. Shout out to Joe Bryan. What's the Problem will always be a link in the show notes for this podcast. He's actually coming on as a guest, so he will be part of the launch guests as well.
Right.
And you're absolutely correct. I've been in Bitcoin for half a decade at this point, and it was the first time that there was something so glaringly new within this space that I thought this is palatable for everyone. We had very similar journeys to Bitcoin. So I first heard about it in 2012, 2013, 2017, during that run up to $20,000. 2018, my mother went to a lecture at the LSE, came back raving about it. 2019, I invested in a friend's company. He told me, you should take some of this money and buy Bitcoin. He almost actively pushed me away from his own company. And at every point, I had made the decision in my mind, having not done a minute's research, that there is no way that governments will allow this. This was the story that I had told myself. This is too disruptive. Governments will never allow it. And it wasn't until I was in Lebanon, and their currency was collapsing as I arrived. So when I arrived, it was about 5,000 lira to the dollar. It had already fallen from 1,500 to the dollar. I bought $1,000 worth of lira, so 5 million lira. And within 3 days, the exchange rate had gone to 8,000 to the dollar. So it lost 40% of its buying power in 3 days. And I was like, what is going on?
Man, that is a visceral experience for you in that moment. I can see. And by the way, that's a great story in your real life experience, because that sort of thing happens in a lot of countries around the world at that speed. But for you to live through it and really just being financially rinsed over the space of a couple of days.
And then over the course of the next year and a half, it went to 120,000 to the dollar. So from 1,500 to 120,000. So it literally lost 99% of its buying power in 2 years. And actually, I use that fall in purchasing power in my presentations and my workshops, because if you look at that right next to the purchasing power of the dollar over the last 100 years, it's the exact same chart. The only variable is time.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's very powerful when you have a personal experience. This is what you did with your own money in another country. That's what happens. So, I can see why that probably prompted you to move your research a bit faster.
And then, so it was exactly that. So then I found Bitcoin in, this would have been December 2020. So it was about 6 months out from the bull run, the peak in 2021. And initially, like most people, I just piled into it because number go up, greed, fear, lack, that all of those things. Made lots of mistakes, lost lots of money, but subsequently have gone down the rabbit hole of, well, what is this technology? So it's, I want to come back to you using the word curiosity, because prior to 2020, I wasn't that curious. I would make up my mind, as I said, I would make up my mind about something, create a story in my own mind, and then that was pretty set. I didn't have the time or the capacity. I was quite fearful. I didn't have that time or capacity to be curious. So fast forward December 2020, I'm in lockdowns in Lebanon in a hotel room, which, by the way, they were still figuring out arbitrages. So the hotel was still at the official exchange rate. So I was in a beautiful suite that was $150 a month.
A month?
Wow. But I was ordering takeaways from the apps, and they were still figuring out the price point. So like sometimes you get a huge Chinese buffet and it would cost $5, and then other times you'd get a burger and it was 20.
Wow.
So, I finally had that headspace to be curious. And then that led me down, what is this technology? It's the separation of government and state. It's freedom money, essentially. And actually, I was at an event last week, the launch of the Bitcoin Humanitarian Alliance, and they brought in lots of speakers from Russia, Ukraine, Rwanda, Venezuela, Afghanistan, Costa Rica, places with authoritarian governments. And every single one of these people, Palestine, they were able to receive money permissionlessly, anonymously, because when they received it through the traditional rails, they were immediately targeted by the authoritarian regimes. Whoever sent it and whoever received it were immediately pulled in for questioning at best, debanked at best, and imprisoned at worst.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think this is one of the challenges when you're talking about, this is a IFA Bitcoin podcast. Our clients don't live in Venezuela or any of these other countries, so that's not considered a number one problem to solve. That everyone moans and groans about the government and all that sort of stuff, but it's not necessarily locking you up yet, for receiving money and transferring funds and all that sort of thing. So therefore, the crucial urgency. I mean, those people in those countries, I guess they've got to find a solution. There is a pressing need, because otherwise they are in big trouble. So, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And let's bring it back to this is the Bitcoin IFA podcast. We are relatively UK focused. So there is that kind of mass adoption around the world to use this new technology as payment rails. But you're absolutely correct that in the West, we still have fully functioning payment rails. But what I don't think people are aware of is that because there is this mass adoption elsewhere, there is huge demand for this finite product, finite technology. So let's bring it back to, there's a couple of questions actually. So why should IFAs be curious about this? And then in your experience, have you found IFAs to be curious about it? And then why or why not?
All right, let me answer that one first, because that's the easy one. By and large, no, I haven't found many IFA. I mean, I don't know every IFA up and down the country, but certainly in my travels and my conversations, communications, and looking online and social media, there's a handful. There's not many. There's people I've had a conversation with who kind of really understand the whole thing and have done the work and have done the research and study, and they're competent and are able to discuss the whole issue with some authority. But I would say, I don't know, 95% of advisors are either not really interested or actually very anti the whole thing. I've had a few, because I've posted a few things on X in the last few months. I get a few choice responses. I don't reply to them, but so there's quite a sort of a bit of an anti-Bitcoin stance in my experience. Well, from what I've seen out there, and why should advisors? Why should they be curious? Why should they wish to learn more? Well, again, that's a big question. I'm going to go back to the starting point, which is you don't have to be, and the biggest thing that the more I think about this, and this goes back to those conversations with my dad years ago, because he said, well, inflation's going up, the value of the pound in your pocket is going down. I said, but that's why, our core investment strategy philosophy is what is generically known as the great companies of the world. We're going to recommend to our clients, put your savings and your investments into effectively capitalism, distilled down into 13,000 of the world's best organizations, run by super talented, well-paid people who are out there building things, selling things, and you get to participate in that magic money-making machine. So again, what's the problem? The government aren't necessarily raiding my bank account and locking me up. My investments are going up ahead of the rate of inflation. I don't need to do this. So I do think that's a bit of an issue to start with. If you think about the client banks of the average advisory firm, let's face it, they are affluent. That's the point. They've got money problems, if you like. I've got a chunk of money. I'm saving for retirement. So I'm going to hire somebody. I'm going to hire an expert, a financial planner, an advisor, to help guide me through that. So these are not people who are necessarily sort of poverty stricken, don't have any savings, which is that's a whole other issue, and that's where some significant challenges definitely do exist. So there's less of a pressing need for it. This thing that's going to, in theory, separate my assets from state control, if you like, and is going to give me a chance of beating the prevailing rate of inflation, money dilution, or whatever. I don't really need to do it. So that's what's one of the challenges where we are right now. But why should someone be curious? They should be curious because if you are planning to be in this industry, in this profession for the next decade or more, then I think number one, it's as a defense mechanism. I think you just need to you need to be able to discuss this rationally. And even if your answer is it is a load of nonsense, I'm not going near it, I'm not advising, you need to be able to articulate that very crisply and clearly because you've done your research. Who is it? The late big hero of mine, the late Charlie Munger, he famously said, I always try to learn my opponent's argument better than he or she does themselves, or words to that effect. And I think that's the point. If you are anti-Bitcoin, then really understand, don't just say it's a scam, because that doesn't wash. Tell me why you think it's a scam, but give me the detail. Give me, prove that you've done the work, done the research. I can tell you in our business now, we have, and we continue to get smart, intelligent, well-informed clients asking us about this. And I don't think the answer is it's a nonsense, don't worry about it, Mr. and Mrs. Client. I don't think that washes anymore for clients. They expect you to know about something which, let's face it, is there's what is it, 2 trillion market cap, something like that. So this is not nothing. This is it's a significant global asset class. And if you say, I don't know anything about it and it's rubbish, then I don't know. I think if I was a client, I'd probably question that a little bit about how switched on my advisor is. So that's the number one thing I think people should do, is learn about it so that you can make an informed decision and say, I've done the work and I've concluded it's not for me, not for my clients, or no, I think there is some value here. Let's explore more. So we're getting, a lot of our clients are business owners, entrepreneurs, and they're just, by their very nature, it seems to me when I have conversations with them, they're back to this idea, they're curious, they read stuff, they meet in groups of other like-minded people. And it's kind of, people keep saying it. And so they say, what does your advisor say? And if the answer is always, he says it's rubbish, she says, don't go near it. I think that could, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the next couple of years, I think that could possibly be a little chink in your armor in terms of your rationale and how you serve your clients. So I think, as I say, why should they be curious? They should be curious as a defense mechanism because it's a significant asset class, and they should at least be well informed. The other thing I was thinking about, it is true that most of our clients investing in effectively equities, global equities, are not feeling the pain that others are. But then look at the second order, or look beyond that, because one of the most important things that comes up in almost all our client meetings is family, is children, is grandchildren. So, all right, you might be okay, and you might see out your retirement, possibly undertaking this. But if you think about what's actually happened around the world in the last few decades, I mean, it's incredible. I moved from Scotland to London. I bought a flat in London when I was 22. I don't think there's any chance of any 22-year-old, but without any parental help, I just, I said at the time, I had a man-sized mortgage. I had a pretty chunky mortgage, but it was affordable. It was punchy, but it was all right. It was okay. So that's not happening anymore. It can't, for all the reasons that we know. The property prices have continued to grow at a significant pace, particularly in London and the southeast, but also around the country. And wages haven't kept pace with it. So if you are an affluent retiree in Middle England, and you have got some concerns for your grandchildren, then again, back to this question of why should an advisor be interested? Because your client is very interested to protect the living standards of their children and grandchildren and beyond, all that sort of stuff. So, and also those very people, because I've had this myself, those younger generation are saying to mum and dad, do you invest in Bitcoin? Does your advisor talk to you about it? And so for all those reasons, I think it is worthwhile going to the next step. I'm not saying, and by the way, maybe we'll talk about this. You can't invest in Bitcoin. You can't, as a regulated advisor, you can't recommend it. It's not you can't, there isn't even a proper ETF in the UK. So, that's a whole other thing that you can love it to death. You couldn't recommend it anyway. So that's, there's a lot, we really are at a bit of a transition period right now. We probably will be for the next year or two, I think. And that is to do with the regulatory landscape, because obviously the US tends to lead this stuff, and they seem to be quite progressive and quite advanced in this whole area. We at the moment seem to be, from what I see, falling quite far behind. We're not really through various sort of communities and networks that I have spoken with who have engaged. I haven't, but some people have engaged with the FCA. They're quite anti. From that seems to be the message so far. They're not saying yes, it's under review. They're saying no. They're kind of using that words and language. They're kind of it's a scam. We don't believe it holds up. And what I do think, Bitcoiners say it is inevitable, whether you like it or not. But it's another thing that I think it's a bit too aggressive, to say that to somebody. But if the largest country by economy size in the world is beginning to embrace it, and they're talking about strategic Bitcoin reserves in the US and all that sort of thing, we are going to look slightly odd as a country to do nothing about it at all. So things are evolving, things are changing, but it's a good get out of jail card for an advisor right now. If the client says to them, "What do you think about Bitcoin?" I don't know, because it's not regulated. But neither is art or classic cars or watches or any of those other things. And it's not a bad idea just to know a bit about something, even just the data on it. What is investing in vintage watches. Well, if that sort of thing comes up, but obviously Bitcoin is a significant asset class that people ought to learn a bit more about.
That's a great answer. And yeah, the FCA currently classified Bitcoin as what's called a restricted mass market instrument, and they've classified it exactly the same as every other crypto. And I think you've mentioned this already, but Bitcoin is not crypto. Crypto is not Bitcoin. It is technically a cryptocurrency. It's built on a blockchain, but it is a digital commodity like gold, completely decentralized. There's no marketing team. There's no CEO. There's no company behind it. So Bitcoin is not crypto, but in the eyes of the FCA, it is. So Bitcoin and unicorn fart token, whatever it's called, which is a coin that you can buy. Do not recommend buying it. But they have the exact same risk profile according to the FCA.
Yeah.
And I feel like that can't do anything but hinder advisors, A, to obviously be able to speak about it, but B, it's also then going to present that barrier that you've described for them to go and research it and do their own research. Because this is just my feeling of it, but you and I I'm coming into Capital soon to present a Bitcoin workshop.
Yeah. And
I've reached out to a couple of other advisors to offer the exact same workshop for free in exchange for a testimonial, if it's worth it, and honest feedback on how this is going to be received, if it actually adds value. And you being the progressive guy that you are, you were all over it. A couple of other advisors, their feedback ranged from apathy, from nothing, ghosting, to essentially stop bothering me. This is this is unregulated, go away. And in my mind, I couldn't help but think, this is going to become a regulated asset. Whether it's this year, next year, it will at some point. And then at that point, you're very likely to be catching up. You're going to be trying to catch up at the speed of light, as opposed to getting ahead of this thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Um, it's interesting when I go back to, I mentioned we did a lot of work in my business around our investment philosophy.
Hey team, just a quick pause to say a huge thank you. You've given us your most precious assets, your time and your attention. And honestly, it means the world to us. If you've enjoyed this episode or you take value from these conversations, it would really mean a lot if you could like, comment, or subscribe. Those things really help the algorithm and they help the channel to grow. And if there's someone in your life who would take value from this, maybe a fellow advisor or someone just curious about Bitcoin, please send it their way. You never know what it might spark. Okay, back to the studio.
And I was thinking it's the same sort of strategy needs to apply. And I mean, the brief backstory on that is financial crisis 2007-8. Everything just fell through the floor. Now, our philosophy up until that point was not for everything, but for a lot of things, we outsourced our investment solutions because I just took the view, naive as I was at the time, that all these discretionary portfolio managers, fund managers, etc. They are all smart boys and girls in nice pinstripe suits, and they say the right words in language, and they've got nice charts and graphs that go from bottom left to top right, and all well and good. And that was fine for several years. Global financial crisis hits, and I'm looking at these portfolios and I think, man, they've just absolutely cratered. And I thought these guys, now obviously you can't deny the markets, but some of them were just absolutely awful. Some of the returns they had, way below market returns. And back to my sense of curiosity, I just began to think, is there a better way? Now, again, the world has changed a lot since then, because 2007-8, and then coming out of it. And what we did in my firm, I knew there was a better solution, but I didn't quite know what it was. And we spent, myself and two colleagues, shout out to Graham and Charles, who are still around. We spent pretty much a whole year. No, not every day, obviously, but a series of probably monthly meetings. There'd be like half a day meeting, effectively going right back to basics, blank piece of paper. Right. What do we believe? Do markets work? Are markets efficient? And on and on and on. And it was obviously it's a massive piece of work. We come out of that, the other side of that, with effectively we call it our investment Bible. It is just a deep, document of evidence, research, academic research, not from the fund groups who obviously got a vested interest in positioning things, but from Chicago School of Finance, from Oxford and Cambridge, and all these, London School of Economics, places like that, where they've got professors of finance who've won Nobel Prizes for this stuff. So I think I'm going to believe this, but as I say, it was a long journey, it was a long process, and I don't have patience generally, and I was gritting my teeth through this, but it was one I thought, we've got to do it because it's absolutely fundamental to our business to get this stuff right. So we come out the other end, and we launched, it wasn't actually until 2011, we launched what we call intelligent investing, which is our investment philosophy, our model portfolios. And guess what? They've been brilliant. It's one of the best things we've ever done in our business. They stack up. I would humbly say they are world-class investment models, and and they work. They just work. They're pretty simple, and they're effective, and they're backed by the data. So that's what I think. Again, if that took us a year of lots of grinded hard work, why wouldn't we spend not a year, but a bit of time learning about the next thing? Now, one of the challenges that a lot of advisors are going to have, and do have, is that a lot of advisors still outsourced one way or another to model portfolio services, fund groups. There's a lot of kind of advisory teams who consult and advise to advisors and help them build portfolios. And I haven't seen one yet that has got even an open mind on Bitcoin. Again, I hope I'm not sort of doing anyone down here, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anyone who says this could be, it's of interest, it's on the watch list at least, and here's some research and data. But as I say, if you are serious about your business, and hopefully everyone listening to this absolutely is, getting your investment philosophy right is essential. You can't just we did in the past sort of outsourced it because they had a nice office in the West End or something like that. But this thing called governance and due diligence and research, that's what your clients pay for, and therefore it's just something I think, as the saying goes, you've got to do the work. Just do the work. Be prepared to allocate resources and time to research this. I mean, it's interesting. And again, thank you very much. Take the opportunity to thank you for offering to come into our firm, coming in soon to run this workshop. And we've pretty much got a full house because I sold it to my colleagues on the basis of curiosity. We are being asked by our clients, some big and significant clients, about it. It is growing. It's not going to go away anytime soon. Why don't we come and spend half a day? And thank you very much. We look forward to you doing it. Probably worthwhile if anyone's listening to this, if they want to get in touch with you, because you are, you're getting this whole thing going. You're going to be adding some real value and some resource to the advisor community. So if I don't know, one or two other people want to get in touch with you, you might have a chat.
Thanks for that shout out. People can get hold of me at thebitcoinifa.com.
There you go.
I think you're absolutely correct. And look, we have discussed, I'm wary of time. There's so much that we can go into. We're going to have a round 2 on this.
Sure.
But we've obviously discussed the technology aspect of it, the sort of humanitarian side, adoption globally. We haven't really touched on the fact that it's basically the best performing asset in the history of the world in terms of going from 0 to near 6 figures per coin in 14 years.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I would add to what you've said there is that I think an IFA or financial advisors, wealth managers aren't really doing their due diligence if they're not at least aware of the fact that this thing has the potential to be the best performing asset for the next 15 years as well as the previous 15 years. So as you mentioned, clients are going to come to you. They're going to ask about it. They're generally going to be the most curious, which in my experience generally means that they're probably some of the most successful people.
That's right.
And you want to be the most informed person in the room. Even if you have a very good counter argument, which is, better than Warren Buffett's, this is rat poison. Mm-hmm. Even if you have a solid philosophy that says, we're not going to invest in it. We're not going to invest in it. We're not going to invest your funds in it. And these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
But I think in my experience, having spoken to financial advisors about this, they have a tendency sometimes to hide behind the fact this is unregulated, so we can't talk about it, as opposed to just having an adult conversation that ends with, and of course, I cannot recommend you do anything with this product, but I know about it. Or technology rather than product.
Yeah, exactly. In the and I know, obviously, conscious of time as well. I don't want to sort of sidetrack you, but there is Bitcoin's like what do you call it? Pandora's box. Once you kind of open it and you think, oh, it's a thing that goes up in value. It seems to. Well, what is it, about 60% a year on average since?
The ARR is roughly 60% for the last 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So that. And you think, well, that's good. That's a thing. That's interesting. If there's a fund who'd done that, we'd all be piling into a proper retail investment fund. But then you go to the next level and you say, aha, this is where the Joe video comes in as well. This idea of, if you think about all the challenges and problems that are in the world, and again, without sort of redoing all the information that he shares in that video, back to the, your kids can't buy a property. We have so therefore people are putting off getting married, settling down, having children. The birth rate is through the floor. We've got a mental health crisis. We've got an obesity crisis. We've got forever wars. We've got all this stuff. You think, right. They've all got something in common here. And all roads lead back to the money system doesn't work. It just doesn't work. That's why. And you go, aha, that's it. And then beyond that, there's a whole world that I am not remotely in. I'm trying to learn about the technology, about mining, about hash rate, about all that sort of stuff. But and God knows there probably is a whole other 50 levels beyond that. But for now, it's an asset class that tends to go up in value, and it's a solution to a problem that we all experience in one way or another. We see it, we experience it individually, our families, our circumstances, and therefore our clients. All that being said, therefore, it is, in my humble opinion, it is imperative to learn more about it and come to your own conclusion and not hide behind, I can't talk to you about it.
Exactly right. Do your own research.
Yeah.
Verified, don't trust. And actually, the final point, before I ask you the final question, I was talking with a family friend of my mother's last night, and we were talking about Bitcoin, and she dismissed it in a way that I know lots of people do, which is, I don't understand it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, do you understand how your hairdryer works? Your car? Do you understand how equities work? Like how we actually value companies and equities on the stock market? No. Okay, but you buy all of those things and you use all of those things every day. Yes. And it was a light bulb moment for her. They're like, okay, this thing, people are talking about it. It does tend to go up in value. Do I really need to fully, does she need to be in the minutiae and really understand how this thing works? Or is it just, something good to potentially put a few £100 into and leave it alone for 5 years?
Yeah, exactly. But I can relate to your friend there, because that's what people say. It's complicated. I don't need to understand it. I'm not going to. And let's face it, historically, it's had a reputation with being associated with scammers, with drug money, you name it. It's got a bad rep, within the let's say the broader population, the mainstream media, all that sort of thing. So it's still got a bit of a PR job to be done. I know, no doubt, this podcast is part of that, slowly but surely, to try to help and educate people. And again, of course, advisors themselves have got access to thousands and thousands of clients, and therefore you're doing good work. I think it's a great initiative with this podcast. I mean, as I told you kind of offline, you're probably going to get a bit of pushback or a bit of don't be surprised if it doesn't fly for the first couple of episodes. But I mean, I'm a big fan of podcasts anyway, creating them and then consuming them myself. It's a great way to just get information, pop your headphones in and go for a walk or something and listen to it. And if they are, helpful, informed conversations, then I know you've got some great guests lined up as well. Bit by bit, you might just begin to slowly, move the dial on the view.
Well, thank you. And hopefully, yeah, I mean, the dream is to put some pressure on the FCA to reclassify Bitcoin as something other than restricted mass market instrument, so that the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, Vanguard can launch Bitcoin ETPs, ETNs, so that we can get access within our tax wrappers. I nearly forgot that. I'm a financial advisor. I forgot the word for tax wrapper. That's it. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. Is what this podcast has been launched with that goal in mind. So thank you. And yeah, just coming back to that PR issue, we in the Bitcoin community we call that FUD, which is an acronym. It stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Yeah. So there's always new FUD coming along.
Well, interesting as well. That's also when I'm in my various AI communities, they've got exactly the same thing. There's a lot of FUD around in AI because people are, and one of the other emotions is fear as well. You're thinking, I don't know, almost a fear of missing out, fear of getting involved, fear of losing your money, any number of different things. And so, but I think as you rightly say, you're not telling people to put their life savings and go and buy Bitcoin and cold storage it and multi-sig and all that sort of stuff. You're saying maybe put 100 quid in it and go through of actual, buying Bitcoin as opposed to a Revolut card or something like that, just to experience it. What is the technology? What is it like? Do you use, is it a website? How do you do it? That's quite a, I would say anyone, that's quite a useful experience just to do. Throw a small amount of money into it and go through the experience.
Baby steps. Exactly. Ultimately, right. We do want everyone in cold wallets, multi-sig, but that's 10, 20 years away, I think, for most people.
Yeah.
Baby steps. Access within tax wrappers, access to funds, and we'll go from there. Right, yeah. Alan, Final question. This is going to be the same question to everyone on this podcast. So, what is one positive addition that Bitcoin has brought to your life outside of number go up?
Outside of number go up, what it has done, and it's Bitcoin, but also everything that goes around it. So the knowledge of it and information. I've talked about it throughout our conversation. It's my awakening. I'll summarize it as that, an awakening. It's very interesting. You know, there's no question in my own experience is there's a sense of unease in the world, in the country. When you walk down the street in London, or you have conversations with people, there's a sort of underlying imperceptible that's why I feel anyway. Some things aren't quite right, and you know, there's lots of kind of negative news out there, but the whole concept of Bitcoin has compelled me to slow down, stop, do some research, and join the dots. So if it's too grand, you know, if it's not too grand, I should say, to call it an awakening, a realization that all these things are related. They're not just individual isolated things. So, but the existence of Bitcoin, which then encouraged me to learn more and to read books and to watch videos, and slowly, and then, you know, the moment when the penny drops, that's what it's given me. It's like, I get it. Makes sense. So yeah, that's been great.
It's a brilliant answer. Thank you, Alan. If people want to get a hold of you or follow you, find you, where can they?
Check out our website, capital.co.uk, and I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn, because look me up, Alan Smith at Capital on LinkedIn. And as this is another shout out, this is an audience, a podcast for financial advisors. If anyone hasn't found the Real Advisor podcast, TRAP, go and check it out.
Highly recommend. Thank you, Alan.
Pleasure.